Okay, so this is my liquid sample that is my Carvone product. I gave it plenty of time so that all of the dichloromethane evaporated away. These are my salt plates. So these are brand spanking new. They won't always look like this, but we want to keep them looking like this as long as possible. So only handle these by the sides, and ideally only handle them with gloves on. When you rinse them, well, often you can clean them off just by wiping with a Chem wipe. Never, ever, ever use water or an alcohol, which tends to have a lot of water in there because they are made of sodium chloride, and that is easily dissolved in water. Just ask our oceans. So to prepare your sample, you just have to put a drop on there and then cover it up with the other salt plates. Okay. If you get any oozing out the edges, use a Chem wipe just to dry off around the outside. Now, if you're feeling really careful, you can just set this onto this kind of a plate. I always worry that it's going to flip over, so we have a more secure way. So we put down the little rubber gasket, and then we put down our salt plates, and then we put down another rubber gasket. Try to get it lined up with the one behind. We put on the front plate, and then we screw this down to hold it in place. You don't need all four of them. Okay, you don't want to go super hard to crack the salt plate, but just make sure it's not going to slide. So now I pick up this whole thing and I set this in here. Where we put it forward back doesn't, well, I don't know if it matters. See how we've got this little space here? I aim for close to that. And it doesn't matter whether we're going one way or the other. So close this. Now I'm going to be using the computer, so I take off my glove. Okay, so these videos are going to be all out of order because I'm trying to use a new imitation GoPro, and I keep recording the wrong thing. So I have a lovely video of the keyboard, which doesn't help you much. So we've made up our sample, but we need to make sure that the instrument is ready to go. So we want to come here and click on Collect and do Experiment Setup. Under Collect, 8 scans is good, Resolution 1 is probably good. We want to make sure our final format is in %transmittance. And then collect background after every 120 minutes, that should be just fine. We also want to go to Bench and take a look at the range. So we're going to collect the spectrum between 4,000 and 600, and that should be fine. Okay, so we click OK, and we're set up. Next, we need to collect a background. So this only has to be done about every couple hours. So if you're the first one to run the IR in a day, you get to do this, and if not, then somebody else probably just did. So it gives you the reminder, please prepare to collect the background spectrum. So I know that there's nothing in here. I'm going to close the lid because that's how I'm going to run my samples also. And I click OK. Down here, this shows me the status, and it's getting ready to take its measurements. So we're looking at %transmittance on the y-axis and wave numbers in inverse centimeters on the x-axis. Right? It's not done yet, but after like halfway there, it puts up the kind of the draft. So now data collection has stopped, but we're going to wait here a second. Let's take a look at this. So compared to other IR spectra you've seen, this probably looks really ugly, but trust me, for a background spectrum, this looks just fine. Sorry, let me clarify. A background spectrum, when we're using the transmission mode, this looks just fine. So we don't need this, so we say no, don't add to window 1. Next, we're going to collect our sample. So I have my sample made up, and I'm sliding this in here, close this, and I click on Collect Sample. I can put in the name if I want. You don't have to. Okay, and then we click OK. Again, please prepare. Yes, I know it's in here. Everything's ready to go, so I click OK. We can see the progress. I think at the 4th scan, it puts up the spectrum. And then it's taking a few more scans, and it's going to average them all. Alright, now it's done. So this time, yes, we do want to add to window 1. Alright, so we've got some signals up here. This is around 3,000, so these would be our SP3CHs just below 3,000, SP2CHs just above 3,000. Here we have our carbonyl, and this is weaker than what we might expect, but that's okay. This would be our carbon-carbon double bond. We've got some other things down here, but we don't really need them. So rather than just trying to guesstimate what these are, we should label the exact wave number at which these absorb. So we will come up here to find peaks, and we get this. So we have a line that goes across. We can click lower or higher to raise or lower the threshold. Right? So if I have my threshold down here, it only sees peaks that come down this far, so it only labels one of them, and the rest of these are not labeled. If I click up high to put my threshold up here, now I do label these other peaks. Right? I could go a little bit higher to get the top. Okay. I could go a little bit higher to get a reading for this one, and it doesn't make it too messy, so this is probably good. So now I come up here and I click on Replace. So this puts the spectrum back into the main window. We can still see everything that we need. Sometimes if this gets chopped off, then what you need to do is come up here to View. Which one is it? If you click on full scale, then that will adjust so that you can see the peaks and the labels. Okay? So that looks fine. Now that make sure that you're in the main window, not still in the Find Peaks window, and then you can click here to print. Often the hardest part of running an IR is just finding where it prints to, so just double check that, and you can hit print and then find your spectrum. What else? Once you are sure you have your spectrum, then there are 2 things you need to do. One is to leave the software ready to go. So you are going to hit clear, and that removes your sample, and it's ready for the next person. If you don't do that, then the software keeps giving you new windows, and it's just harder to work with. So make sure you clear it so it's ready for the next person. Now, don't forget your sample. So you want to take this out, and I need a new pair of gloves now. So we unscrew this, take this off, take off the gasket. If there's anything on here, well, no matter what, best practice is we just wipe this off. Kim wipe works fine. If there's really anything on here, then we might want to rinse it off with a solvent. Same thing, check this gasket as well. And then we're just going to separate these and wipe off our product. If you have something that smells very strong, then it'll be really obvious whether your salt plate is clean or not. But then, sometimes if you smell it, it might be your gloves or the Kim wipe that's still close by that you smell. So you'll want to be careful of that. As soon as you're done using them, you should put the salt plates back into a little container that your instructor will show you. And then that goes into a desiccator, which helps to keep the salt plates nice and dry, because again, moisture will dissolve these plates. All right? So put them away unless there's somebody standing right next to you ready to use it. And then take your sample back to your bench and clean up your sample. Make sure you've discarded any of the pipettes that you used, anything like that. Take all of your trash and deal with it correctly. And that is how you run an IR on a liquid sample.